I am Sawyer. If anyone asked me who I loved the most during my college years, I wouldn't hesitate to answer Silas. But if they asked if I'd ever said it out loud, I'd fall silent. Because my love for him always existed in the narrow space between everyone's gazes, where every gesture was scrutinized, every emotion had to be hidden. I met Silas in my sophomore year at a large public university in the Midwest of America. The campus was so vast that sometimes I felt like just a tiny dot in a sea of people. Yet, from the first time I saw him, everything around me seemed to slow down. Silas was a bit taller than me, with broad shoulders and the sturdy build of someone who played sports in high school. His light brown hair was always messily intentional, as if he never really cared what others thought. Silas smiled a lot. A relaxed, carefree smile, very American. The kind that made him easy to talk to. And that's what scared me. We were grouped together in a general sociology class. The first time he sat down next to me, Silas turned and extended his hand.
Hey, I'm Silas.
Sawyer. I shook his hand, my heart beating faster than usual. From that day, we started talking. At first, it was just about assignments, then about strict professors, then about how terrible the cafeteria food was. Silas talked a lot. I listened a lot. I liked how he described his hometown in Oregon, the evenings around campfires with his family, his dreams after graduation to do something meaningful, but not boring. I was quieter. I came from California, grew up in a city where everyone said, be yourself, but it wasn't always truly safe to do so. I'd gotten used to observing before opening up. We gradually became close in a natural way, studying late at the library, eating pizza at midnight, complaining about deadlines. Silas would casually touch me, a pat on the shoulder, a light nudge when joking. Each time, I'd pretend nothing happened, while inside I was a mess of emotions. I didn't know what Silas was like in relationships. He never made it clear. He'd mentioned an ex-girlfriend from freshman year once, but only in passing, without emotion. I didn't dare ask more. I was afraid the answer would leave me no reason to stay close to him like this. At school, we were like any other pair of best friends. Two guys walking side by side, laughing, no one suspected anything. But that very normalcy was what hurt me. I loved Silas in silence, in every little moment. When he furrowed his brow concentrating on reading, when he dozed off at the study table, when he called my name in that deep, drawn-out voice. Once, at a party in the dorm, Silas drank a bit too much. He draped his arm over my shoulder and pulled me out to the balcony for some cool autumn night air. You're the only one here who makes me feel at ease, he said, staring into the distance. I stood there, my heart pounding out of my chest. I wanted to tell him he was the only one for me too. But behind us in the room were laughs, friends' gazes, invisible norms I'd grown used to following. So I just smiled and replied safely, me too. Silas didn't say more. He just stood beside me, close enough for me to feel his body's warmth, but far enough that I couldn't cross any boundary. That night, back in my room, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. I realized loving Silas wasn't just about wanting to touch him, but also the fear of losing him if I spoke the truth. Amid everyone's gazes, I chose silence. Not because I lacked courage, but because I wasn't ready to risk everything. And that's how our story began. An unnamed love, growing day by day, in the silences that only I could hear my own heartbeat in. Everything started to change that winter semester. Silas moved to the same dorm building as me, just 2 floors apart, but to me that distance felt shortened to a few breaths. He'd knock on my door casually, as if it were the most natural thing. Sawyer, want to go to the cafeteria? Hey, I'm bored of studying. Let's go for a walk. Lend me your laptop charger. Those trivial reasons became habits. Silas appeared in my personal space so often that my small dorm room started carrying his familiar scent. Masculine soap mixed with coffee. Some evenings, we'd sprawl on my bed, each with a phone, saying nothing. The silence between us wasn't awkward. On the contrary, it made me feel strangely safe. Silas would rest his arm on his stomach, shirt riding up to expose a bit of skin. I'd force myself to look away, pretending to focus on my screen, while every cell in me was aware of his presence. "Do you ever feel lost?" Silas suddenly asked. I turned to him. He was staring at the ceiling, his voice low. "I think everyone has," I replied, choosing the most neutral answer. Silas chuckled softly, but there was no joy in it. "Yeah, but sometimes I feel like I'm living a role others expect." That statement stuck with me for days. I wondered if Silas was referring to something specific, or just the general pressure of a graduating student. I wanted to ask deeper, but feared digging into a place neither of us was ready to face. At school, everyone's gazes were always there. Friends, classmates, harmless jokes. Silas was the likable type. He blended in easily, was easily accepted. I was different. I existed on the edges of relationships, not too isolated but never truly seen. Once, in class, a guy behind us joked about a gay couple on TV. Just a half-joking remark, but I saw Silas's body stiffen slightly. I glanced at him. Silas said nothing, just gripped his pen tighter. After class, we walked to the parking lot together. Cold wind whipped through the bare trees. "You okay?" I asked. Silas was quiet for a few seconds. "Yeah, I just hate that kind of talk." I wanted to say me too, that those seemingly harmless words had made me withdraw for years. But I didn't say it all. I just nodded, walking beside him, the distance close enough for our hands to brush. But neither did. The boundary between us was so thin that I always feared I'd be the one to break it. Another night, Silas slept over in my room. Just because he was too lazy to go down 2 floors, he said. We lay side by side, each on an edge of the bed, backs turned like proper friends. Couldn't sleep. I heard his steady breathing, so close it made my chest ache. I wondered if I turned, if I lightly touched his back, would everything crumble? In my mind, a barrage of gazes flashed. Friends, society, people who didn't know us but were always ready to judge. I'd grown used to living under those gazes. But what about Silas? In the middle of the night, he rolled over. His hand accidentally brushed mine. I froze. Silas didn't pull away. He left it there as if deeply asleep. I didn't dare move. I just lay there, feeling the warmth from his hand, my heart racing. It was our most intimate moment. No words, no looks, just 2 bodies existing in the dark. The next morning, Silas woke first. He smiled, as always, as if nothing unusual had happened the night before. But I knew I'd sunk deeper into an inescapable feeling. I loved Silas not just in silence, but in restraint. And each passing day, pretending it was all just friendship became harder. Amid everyone's gazes, I continued playing it safe. But inside, I started wondering, was silence truly protecting us both, or just prolonging a pain no one dared name? Spring came slower than I expected. The campus started turning green again, but inside me was still a quiet gray. Silas and I were still together every day, close enough to be called tight, far enough for no suspicions. We became a familiar duo in friends' eyes. Sawyer and Silas, always together, always in the same frame. Only, I increasingly realized I couldn't play the role as well anymore. Silas started dating. He didn't hide it from me. One afternoon, sitting on the steps outside the library, Silas said it casually, like it was no big deal. "I'm seeing someone. Her name's Emily. Communications major." I nodded. A smile plastered on my face. "Oh, that's great." The words left my mouth so lightly it scared even me. But inside, something shattered. Not loudly, just a silent crack spreading. Silas talked about Emily moderately, not overly infatuated, not indifferent. I listened as I always listened to him. I told myself this was inevitable, that since I'd chosen silence, I had to accept this outcome. But when Silas stopped knocking on my door as often, when our evenings sprawling on my bed turned into short texts, "Sorry, busy tonight," I understood I'd underestimated the loss. I wasn't jealous in a loud way. I was jealous in small details. Seeing Silas smile at Emily the way he used to at me, him texting during our lunches, his absence from places where he used to be. Once, I accidentally saw them holding hands in the central quad. Sunlight shone down. Everything looked so picture-perfect. A guy and a girl, young, fitting, no need to hide. I stood from afar, pretending not to see, then turned away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wondered if I was hurting because I loved Silas, or because I envied his easier life. Silas didn't vanish completely. He was still there, still calling my name familiarly. But an invisible glass wall separated us, transparent, but untouchable. One evening, Silas came to my room. The first time in weeks. "I miss our random chats," he said, sitting on my bed. I wanted to ask, "Do you miss me?" or just the no-pressure feeling? But I didn't. We talked about school, post-grad plans. Silas said he was considering moving to Seattle. I listened, my heart sinking. Seattle wasn't far on a map, but far enough to make all what-ifs meaningless. "Sawyer," Silas said my name, more serious than usual. "Have you ever thought about leaving this place?" "I always do," I replied honestly. "But I don't know if I'm running toward or away." Silas looked at me for a long time. That gaze unsettled me, as if he saw a part of me I'd hidden well. Maybe that's why I said what I shouldn't. "I think you're living a life others easily accept," I blurted. Silas frowned. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. This was the boundary. One more step and everything changes. But I backed off. "Nothing," I said. "Just, you always know what to do." Silas wasn't convinced. He nodded, but I saw disappointment flash across his face. I wondered if he sensed I was hiding something, or just saw me growing distant. After he left, I sat alone for a long time. I realized silence was no longer a safe choice. It was becoming a wall, trapping me with unspoken things. I loved Silas. That didn't change because he was dating someone else. But for the first time, I wondered, if I kept silent, would I lose him completely? Not because he didn't love me, but because I'd never given him a chance to know? Amid everyone's gazes, I'd grown used to bowing my head. But maybe it was time to decide if I wanted to stay invisible, or risk being seen even once. Everything shattered on an evening that seemed utterly ordinary. Silas texted me around 10. "You free? I need to talk." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Some messages will alter a relationship's trajectory. I didn't know the content, but instinct told me tonight wouldn't be like before. Silas arrived at my room looking tired. Jacket still on, hair messy, eyes heavy. He didn't smile when he saw me. "Emily and we just broke up," he said, almost immediately. I didn't know how to react. Part of me felt relieved, a shameful feeling. The rest hurt, knowing breakups are never easy. "I'm sorry," I said, and this time it was genuine. Silas sat in the chair, hands on his knees. "I think it's my fault. I couldn't give her what she needed." "You tried," I replied reflexively. Silas chuckled softly, no humor in it. "No. The issue is, I'm not sure I was trying for her, or because that's how things should be." That statement tightened my heart. Silas looked up at me. His gaze didn't avoid this time. "Sawyer, you're the one who understands me best here. There are things I don't know who else to tell." The air in the room thickened. I could hear my heartbeat clearly. "Sometimes," Silas continued slowly, "I feel like I'm standing before a door that, if opened, changes everything. But if not, I'll live with this emptiness forever." I swallowed hard. I knew what he meant, or at least I thought I did. "Have you ever loved someone without daring to name it?" Silas asked. That question was a precise stab. I had no place to hide anymore. I stood, turned away, pretending to straighten books on the desk. I needed a few seconds to breathe. "Yes," I said, voice hoarse, "and it's the loneliest feeling I've ever known." Silas stood. I heard his footsteps approach, stopping behind me, not touching, but close enough to feel. "So why do we keep silent?" he asked, almost whispering. I turned back. The distance between us had never been so short. I saw fear in Silas's eyes, but not the fleeing kind, the fear of facing truth. "Because of everyone's gazes," I replied. Because of what we might lose. Silas nodded. I'm scared too. But I'm most scared of losing you without ever being honest. That sentence made me tremble. I'd imagined this moment many times, but when it came, I still felt exposed and fragile. I took a deep breath. Silas, I love you. Once said, I realized how light the words were. No Sander, no climax. Just a truth that had existed for so long finally named. Silas didn't respond immediately. He just looked at me, as if confirming he hadn't misheard. Then he stepped closer and placed his hand on my cheek. The touch was gentle, trembling. I didn't pull away. Me too, he said. Maybe, for a long time, we didn't kiss right away. We stood there, foreheads touching, breathing in sync. Outside, the dorm hallway still had people passing, doors opening and closing. The world didn't stop for us. But in that moment, I saw no gazes but Silas's. When he kissed me, it wasn't rushed. It was slow, tentative, like we were learning to allow ourselves happiness. I placed my hands on his shoulders, feeling the reality of his body, no longer imagination. Afterward, we sat on the bed, shoulders touching. Neither spoke for a while. I don't know where this goes, Silas said finally. I don't know if I'm ready to face everything out there. Me neither, I replied. But at least, we're not silent with each other anymore. Silas smiled. A small, real, unguarded smile. Maybe that's enough for now. I leaned my head on his shoulder. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was hiding. Just two guys in a dorm room, choosing honesty with each other, even as the world outside remained complicated. Amid everyone's gazes, we weren't ready to step out. But in this small space, I knew I'd been seen, and loved no longer in silence. After that night, things didn't immediately become easy, but they became real. Silas and I didn't go public. At least not yet. We left my room at different times in the mornings, kept distance in crowds, continued playing the familiar best friends. But between us, there was a new thread, taut, fragile, and alive in every breath. We started meeting in discreet ways. Late evenings on the upper library floors, where few went. Walks around the back of campus, where lights were sparse and no one cared what two guys walking together talked about. In those moments, Silas held my hand. Briefly, enough for me to know it wasn't fantasy. Once, he rested his forehead on my shoulder and said, I didn't expect this feeling to feel so right. I understood. I'd lived too long doubting myself, to the point that when real happiness appeared, I almost didn't believe it existed. But everyone's gazes were still there. One afternoon, we ate with the group. A guy casually asked Silas, Hey, not with Emily anymore? Thought you two were a good match. Silas paused a beat. I saw the tension in his shoulders. No, he replied. We weren't a match like people thought. No one pressed. The conversation shifted. But under the table, Silas's hand lightly brushed my knee. Quick, light. I looked at him. Silas didn't look back, but I knew it was thanks. Moments like that made me realize, courage isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just not denying yourself. At semester's end, Silas got a job offer in Seattle. A job fitting what he'd called meaningful but not boring. He showed me the email, excited yet anxious. You going? I asked, though I knew the answer. Silas nodded. Yeah, but I don't want to leave important things behind. We didn't need to specify what important things were. The night before Silas left, he came to my room. This time, no rush or sneaking. We closed the door, drew the curtains, let the outside world be. Silas hugged me. A full, unhesitant hug. I pressed my face to his chest, hearing the familiar heartbeat. I'm scared, he admitted. Not of leaving here, but of going back to pretending. Me too, I said. But I don't regret it. Silas kissed me deeper, surer this time. Not a kiss of discovery, but of choice. We lay side by side on the bed, hands intertwined, talking about small things. Visits, calls, unclear futures. The next morning, I saw him off to his car. The campus was still crowded, still those familiar gazes. We stood a safe distance apart. Before getting in, Silas looked at me. His gaze was calm and resolute. "You don't have to love me in silence anymore," he said softly. "No matter what happens." I smiled, throat tight. "I know." As the car drove away, I stood alone. But I didn't feel empty. I felt myself standing tall for the first time, amid everyone's gazes. I don't know what our future holds. It might be hard. It might hurt. But I've learned one thing. Silence was once my shelter, but it's not where I want to live forever. I love Silas, and no matter how the world looks at me, I no longer deny it. Amid everyone's gazes, I've chosen to look straight at myself. And this time, I don't turn away.